So usually, my usual audience for story time is expected to go to bed in under 10 minutes so that I can go and watch the rest of Coronation Street with my wife. So if that happens today, that's okay. My name's Luke Moore. I'm the SVP of Revenue at a company called iProov. At the bridge between your real life and your digital life, iProov confirms your genuine presence. That's what we're about. But what we're going to talk about today is usable security. There may be trade-offs when you're trying to basically apply security and make sure that it still allows usability. And we want to look at what those trade-offs might be and whether they're reasonable to you. So consumer demands, we know, are creating an even greater landscape of digital services, and that's creating a larger surface area for cyber attacks. So security is something we have to be aware of when we're enabling all these digital services, like allowing people to enroll in a bank digitally from the smartphone, make transactions, and whatever else it might be. So I wanted to first just look at usability on its own and ask what it actually means to a consumer. So to the consumer, usability really represents convenience. Offering usability allows them to easily access, in a satisfying way, the digital services that you offer. But for a financial institution, this represents a translation from usability to completion rates, more customers successfully completing their transactions. And that whole user experience represents an increased net promoter score. So it has real value. Usability has real value on both sides. From a perspective of security, well, from a consumer's perspective, the security really represents trust. And for the financial institution, trust accumulates over time to reputation. So that becomes another currency that is extremely valuable for the financial institution. So can you afford a trade-off? And is there a trade-off going on? Well, let's think about this for a moment. When you think about the so-called challenger banks' entrance into the market, it's clear that they can't have accumulated trust over years that's converted into reputation. So it's obvious that consumers are willing to take some level of risk in gaining a better access to more usable services and more convenience. For financial institutions that are trying to compete or stay competitive, there's that tie-up or that concern about pressing forward in offering the same level of usability and potentially damaging that security element which has built up trust, which has accumulated to a great reputation. So it may cause a lot of concerns in-house, a lot of discussions in-house about how to progress and offer this kind of usability. Now, iProov absolutely are proponents of biometrics being the strongest form of customer authentication, but even we'll ask, is biometrics really solving the problem? Now, there are a number of different use cases where we are deploying biometrics on a large scale with governments and banks and all sorts of organizations. National identity is definitely one of the newer use cases where making it accessible for all citizens to use an identity service that unlocks their digital services is definitely benefiting from the convenience and accessibility that biometrics offers. But as we're at FinTech, let's look at how a term that iProov has coined, genuine presence, is enabling KYC and onboarding. And in this case, we're looking at Rabobank. Rabobank had to offer their teenage customers when they turned 18 the chance to enroll into adult bank accounts. And initially, they were offering them the chance to come down to the branch. And they knew that this was the least likely demographic to want to actually come down to a branch. There were alternatives already, especially in Europe. So they had to enable their customers to be able to confirm their identity from a smartphone, and they wanted to be able to do this in under a minute. So I'm going to let you have a look now at the example user journey here. And one of the talks later you'll hear is from a company called ReadID. And the first piece of technology you're seeing here is a partner of iProov's, which is ReadID, unlocking the NFC chip within an identity to extract the information about the individual in the onboarding process for opening a Rabobank account. So it's bringing through clean data that we know is valid from a trusted source, including an image which is the biometric that will later be we're comparing against. So there's that biometric information and the information about the user. Where the Achilles heel in the process is when you're in an unsupervised environment using uncertified hardware, how do you know that the user is genuinely present? And so here we're using our technology, so the user has to do nothing at all, but we can actually test and validate that they are genuinely present as the owner of the identity. And in less than a minute, that enrollment is enabled, and they're into their Rabobank account. So genuine presence, what is it? It's a real person authenticating in real time who matches their trusted image. That's all it is. It's simple, but there's a lot of complexity behind it. But why did we coin the term genuine presence, and why do we want to share that with you today? It's because, in theory, your biometric is unique, right? So it should, in theory, be all you need to do is just match your face, and then that unique biometric confirms you are who you say you are. But in unsupervised environments, we had to test, or the market decided we had to test for whether the person is real or not. And this is about things that could be presented to the sensor when you're not there to see it, that are not actually the real person, like a photo, like a mask, like presented videos. This may not be news to most people, it may be news to some, but that's the level of threat that most people have been concerned with. At iProov, we knew about the next level of threats in the way we designed our technology, and we want to share with you the concept of genuine presence as opposed to liveness and what that actually means. If you record a previously successful liveness attempt and replay that, your software injecting it, it's never actually being presented, but the camera believes it has been. That's a replay attack. And if you're asking for liveness, you're not getting defense against replay attacks. So confirming that this is a one-time use is a really important part of this process in deploying biometrics. So you need to think about that, and the term to use is genuine presence. But there's another level. Only 3/4 of the population in the UK, or rather 3/4 of the population in the UK, did not know what a deepfake is. Some of you may not know what a deepfake is, although I'm sure at this show you probably do. But with a few lines of information to describe that something that is not you, because faces are not secrets, can be synthetically generated, and it can be given instructions to follow that follow the instructions that it's given to appear to be you. That's a deep fake. And that kind of threat is also happens to be the most economical and scalable form of attack. So you do need to have awareness that this threat exists. And once consumers knew what this was, 72% of them said they would prefer a service that gave them defense against deep fakes. That's how thin the line is between consumers' awareness of this type of attack, and also hopefully your awareness is increasing so that you can plan to prevent that as well. Let's just quickly look at liveness and some of the methodologies to show that the person is there. And what did we mean by that? Here, this individual is being asked to follow instructions where they're performing for the camera. This is the step where there's no technology involved. You're asking the user to do something that confirms that they're not an inanimate object. So a mask wouldn't respond to these instructions, for example. But deepfakes obviously can, and replay attacks could also be used here, and it would pass those tests. But when we look at the different levels of attack and the security that you're trying to maintain and the usability that you're trying to maintain as well, let's put it all together. Face matching is easy. The user has to do very little, and face matching can occur. When you add in a step for the user to perform, we know that each step that you add reduces completion rate success by about 20%. So asking them to perform an action does increase security, but it reduces usability. Even if you ask them to perform a random action so that you're adding that right now element in, then they're then still going to add more friction to the experience, because each time they're going to have to do something different, which further degrades the user experience. So we end up layering up different methods that accumulate to the security that you want, but it reduces the usability, and that reduces completion rate. So it's difficult for us to balance this equation of offering usability and security. The technology-driven approach that you're seeing here is iProov, where there is a sequence of flashing colors that will never repeat in the user's lifetime. This sequence encrypts it for a one-time use and defends against replay attacks and deep fakes, but it also reflects human skin to show that the properties of the object is actually human, so there's no performance required, and then there's a match. So by knowing what threat vectors existed, we're able to balance the equation, offering the highest levels of security with the highest levels of usability, and therefore translating into the highest levels of completion rates, which is what really matters. So methodology does matter. And here you'll see both side by side, but you also see a quote from a customer who had tested, and the average completion rate for motion-based technology was 2.4 attempts before success versus 1.1 for a technology-driven approach, in this case, iProov. So the thing that we wanted to offer you in the last few seconds I've got to tell you this is a bite-sized buyer's guide, which is on your seat, to help you think about, when you're approaching this problem, what questions you need to ask in an emerging tech space. If you ask for liveness, which is the common term, you'll only get defense up to presentation attack. If you want to have defense against replay attacks and deepfakes, you need to ask for genuine presence. If you want to look at the different options, motion-based and technology-driven, and choose that, that's great. But the best thing you can do is ask them to quantify the success rates and the completion rates of the technology, because that's what translates into a great customer experience and good results for your organization. And of course, we are here today, so do come and ask us some questions. But that's my time up, and thank you for listening.